On November 13, 2025, after spending more than 46 years on death row, Bryan Frederick Jennings was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Starkey. His name became tied to one of the most disturbing crimes in the state's history: the abduction, assault, and murder of a 6-year-old girl. In this video, I'll walk you through what happened that morning, what his final meal was, and the last words he spoke before he died. The story goes back to May 11, 1979, in the quiet neighborhood of Merritt Island, Brevard County. There, a 20-year-old Marine named Bryan Frederick Jennings was unknowingly on the verge of committing an act of violence that would devastate a family and leave him waiting more than 4 decades for his execution. The night before, on May 10th, Jennings had been out drinking with friends at a local bar. At some point during the night, after several drinks, he stopped in front of the Kunash family home. He walked up to a window and saw the children's bedroom lit by a small nightlight. On the bed lay 6-year-old Rebecca Kunash, sleeping peacefully. After watching her for a few moments, Jennings walked away and continued drinking at 2 different bars. Hours later, heavily intoxicated, Jennings returned to his usual bar. A friend, James Slocum, had to drive him home around midnight because Jennings' pants had ripped. Slocum later said he took the wheel because Jennings was far too drunk to drive. After changing clothes, Slocum drove him back to the bar, but Jennings didn't stay there. Between 4 and 5 a.m. on May 11th, he went back to the Kunash home. Robert and Patricia Kunash were asleep elsewhere in the house, unaware of what was about to happen. In her bedroom, lit only by the soft glow of her nightlight, Rebecca slept, unaware that a predator had returned to her window. Jennings quietly approached the window of Rebecca's room. He carefully removed the protective screen and opened the window. He climbed inside, where the little girl lay sleeping. The Marine covered Rebecca's mouth with his hand to keep her from screaming. He lifted her from the bed and, in the darkness, carried her toward the window. With Rebecca in his arms, Jennings rushed to his car parked nearby. He put her inside and drove to a remote area near the Girard Street Canal on Merritt Island, an isolated spot where no one would hear or see what he was about to do. Once at that secluded spot by the canal, the worst happened. Out of respect for YouTube's policies, I won't use the precise term, but Jennings did the most terrible thing you can do to a child. The attack was so extreme that it caused Rebecca serious injuries and bruising in her area. Jennings used such force that he even ended up with bruises on his own area during the assault. Rebecca, just 6 years old, suffered unimaginable pain as this was happening. But the horror didn't end there. After the assault, in what the court described as an act of inconceivable violence, Jennings grabbed Rebecca by the legs, lifted her upside down over his head, and slammed her onto the ground with all his strength. The impact was so severe that it caused an immediate skull fracture, resulting in deep and fatal brain damage. But Rebecca was still alive. Despite the catastrophic damage to her skull and brain, her small heart was still beating. Jennings then carried her toward the canal. He took the dying child and submerged her head underwater, holding her there for roughly 10 minutes, drowning her until she finally stopped breathing. Rebecca Kunash died from asphyxiation due to drowning. After killing Rebecca, Jennings left her body floating in the canal and fled the scene. Minutes later, he returned to the house where he was staying, arriving around 5 in the morning. His aunt, Catherine Music, who was hosting him during his military leave, saw him stumble inside, leaning against the wall and saying, "Oh, I'm so drunk." His clothes and hair were completely soaked, something she noticed right away. Meanwhile, that same morning, Robert and Patricia Kunash woke up to find that their daughter Rebecca was not in her room. The window was open and the protective screen had been removed. Panic set in as they realized what that meant. They immediately called the police, launching an urgent and desperate search to find their daughter. Later that same day, May 11, 1979, Rebecca Kunash's body was found floating in a nearby canal. The autopsy confirmed the horrifying reality of what had happened during her disappearance. The investigation moved quickly. Several neighbors reported seeing an unfamiliar man lurking near the Kunash home around the time Rebecca went missing, and the description matched that of Bryan Jennings. At the scene, officers also found shoe prints beneath the child's bedroom window. After analyzing them, they discovered they matched exactly the type and size of the shoes Jennings was wearing that day. Hours after Rebecca's body was found, Jennings was detained in Orange County due to an outstanding traffic warrant. During the arrest, officers noticed that his appearance fully matched the description given by witnesses. His clothes and hair were still wet, a detail that tied him directly to the area where Rebecca had been found. Investigators processed the crime scene in Rebecca's bedroom and found fingerprints on the windowsill. 2 experts examined them and confirmed they belonged to Bryan Jennings. At first, Jennings denied any involvement. However, under interrogation, he eventually broke down. He confessed to kidnapping and killing Rebecca Kunash. His confession was recorded on audio and later became a central piece of the case. In February 1980, Jennings was brought to trial before a Brevard County jury. He was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, burglary, and other related offenses. The prosecution formally sought the death penalty. During the trial, the jury heard the audio recording of Jennings's confession. Cellmates also testified that he had given them details about the crime. Fingerprint experts took the stand as well, confirming that his prints were found on Rebecca's window. On February 7, 1980, the jury found Jennings guilty on all counts. On May 7, 1980, Circuit Judge Tom Waddell officially sentenced him to death, in addition to imposing 4 life sentences for the other charges. In the years that followed, Jennings filed numerous appeals. On October 27, 1989, he was just 1 day away from being executed in the electric chair after Governor Bob Martinez signed the death warrant. However, on October 26, 1989, the Florida Supreme Court granted a stay, temporarily halting the process. Even so, Jennings remained on death row at Florida State Prison for more than 45 years, becoming one of the longest-serving death row prisoners in the state's history. But eventually, after decades of appeals and delays, his time ran out. On October 10, 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a new death warrant for Jennings, scheduling his execution for November 13, 2025. Bryan Frederick Jennings was executed on November 13, 2025 at 6 p.m. at Florida State Prison near Stark by lethal injection. He was 66 years old at the time of his death. When asked if he had any final words, Jennings, who kept his eyes closed throughout the process, simply replied, "No." Rebecca's parents were not present. Both had passed away many years earlier, never seeing the execution of the man convicted of killing their daughter. And that's the end of today's video. What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comments.